Hej Andreas, og velkommen til.
Tak.
Uh, I dag er det første gang, vi har prøvet på dansk med verdens bedste fys. Men vi valgte godt, at de fleste af dem, der ser videoer, de snakker engelsk. Det er fra
Mm,
Australien, Indien og så forskellige lande, også Danmark.
mm.
Måske vi kan starte på dansk, men skifte til
Yeah,
engelsk.
we can also just change to English. It's fine.
Sure, sure. Well, could you please introduce yourself in to the audience? I mean, you have introduced yourself to me, Andreas, and particularly if you could emphasize the international experience that you've had working with physios from around the country and around the globe in your experience in Qatar, and then tell us. Yeah, whether you have particular opinions about whether certain countries produce really good physiotherapists, whether there are certain styles of physiotherapy or schools of thought that you think are particularly world class. And yeah, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, my name is Andreas, and I'm a physio now, having almost 15 years of experience. I started my journey here in Denmark in a clinic before I moved into like a CrossFit gym and had my own clinic within that CrossFit gym. Together with the owners, we opened a new gym. So have tried to both worked in the structure setting where you see all patients from young to old, from neurological diseases, Parkinson, sclerosis, to the more sporty population. Um, for me, when I grow up, and even then when I grow up as a as a physio, one of my what you can say like one of my dreams and also one of my visions and inspiration, it really came from some of the big institutions around the world. And I was very like I knew I had to go out to some conference to maybe update myself. And in the beginning, I saw the ones that was around me here in Europe, like it was the Kinetic and these things. And then my eyes got open for Aspetar, which is in Qatar. And I tried to apply several times, and at some point I got the job down there. And in 2018, in January, I moved to Qatar, and then I moved back to Denmark in August this year. So it became almost 7 years, and it totally changed my perspective. So what makes a good physio? And you said try to what is the difference things I have seen? I think in Denmark we have a very strong position as a physio, uh, and we are able to receive the customers without any doctor referrals. We can do our own diagnosis. We can also follow the treatment paradigm that we want. That gives us a lot of responsibility, and also lot of trust from the society that we are doing a good job. Um, and what I saw when I came to Qatar, where we probably were around 70 physios in our department, but uh, down there is a lot of like, there's an academy connected, there's a national physio program. So overall, there's probably 300 physios
Mm.
connected to the hospital service. But within the hospital, let's say 70, and they all probably come from 20 to 30 different countries. And then you
Wow.
have the other physios around that you see outside work, where you have like a where you're socializing and having
Mm.
beer. So you heard the perspective as well. So I have probably heard the perspective of how physios are done in 30 to 50 different countries. And one of the things that strikes me is that we are very similar. We all know how to do a Lachman test with a knee. We all know how to do memories. We all know
Mm.
we have an idea how we do our um, neurological testing,
Mm.
and we also know that important to look after red flags,
Mm.
and so we do have the structure around.
Mm.
So we are very similar in our way of meeting the patient.
Mm.
The difference I see is how to interpreting what we're seeing? Are we all seeing the same thing?
Mm,
And the next thing, what are we then doing
hmm
when we see it? Are we then going to do the same thing to change those things we are seeing?
hmm
So how do we agree on what we can see and what is important? That's, I think, is a big thing. It's also what is important for us, what is important for the patients.
hmm
Um, and and then I see there's a big difference in how good we are at what can we say, how we can determine success
mm,
of our treatment. So when you're
hmm
asking who's the best physios in the world
hmm
and what is the best treatment,
Yes.
it's very difficult to answer because we are probably using different criteria
Mm,
to determine what is the best treatment option.
yes.
And there has been a lot of like historical has been a lot of this, and I think this is still going on in Denmark and many other places. Yeah, but the patient didn't call me back, so he's probably very good. Or
Which
like he's
exactly right, because in some ways the world's best physio speaks to you or speaks with you one time and fixes
mm,
you for the rest of your life.
yeah,
Like in some ways that is the world's best standard is minimal intervention,
yeah,
maximal outcome. But then you could also think, well, if you never see the person again, you haven't measured their outcome, and then you don't know if they're actually better in the traditional sense of, well, we have to see you in order to measure your outcome. And okay, so your experience is that internationally, having met and worked alongside or heard the perspectives of physiotherapists that were trained and experienced in many countries around the world and collected or gathered in Aspetar, your experience is that there's not one country or one region that's particularly skilled or competent in physiotherapy. You think they're all quite similar in terms of we know or we have a shared understanding of certain measurements like the Lockman's test, certain assessments like perhaps a triple jump or sorry, a triple crossover hop for ACL readiness to return to sport, that kind of thing. But it's then how we interpret those results and how we then provide recommendations where we see a lot of variation amongst the physiotherapy community. Is that correct?
yeah. So and also that comes back to the patient because I think that probably like 80% of our patient, no matter what treatment we are giving them, they would
Mm.
be good. But we are talking here about the problematic patient. Yes, then some
Mm.
treatments maybe takes the return to what they want to achieve a little bit
Mm.
faster, and some are taking a little bit slower. But in generally, the we can get many different treatments and reach the same goal. So
Yep.
I think one of the things you were saying there is the what outcomes is desirable. And there is the big lacking. Are we collecting the data? Are we
Mm.
collecting also because where is our starting point? So and so I said we are good at maybe measuring this same thing, but and that gives us an idea where the starting point is.
Mm.
But are we good at finding out where is the endpoint for our patient?
Mm.
And 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 to find out the endpoint, we need to test. And for example, now you mentioned triple hop and Lachman, that's a more ACL stuff. So
Mm.
so are we first testing 9 months down the line? Or
Mm.
are we testing multiple times? And
Mhm.
what do we expect from the test and what do we expect on the follow-up test?
Mhm.
Um, Also, when a patient sepsis becomes better, we actually did that study in Aspetar carried out by one of my supervisors, Vasilis Kaikakis, where we asked around 350 patients, how are you feeling today in terms of pain, 0 to 10,
Mhm.
before and after the treatment, before today and last time, and before today and the first time,
Mm.
and how much did you improve
Mm.
on on a global Likert scale from
Mhm.
very worse to very much improved?
Yes.
And what we saw was that a lot of patients came in and we asked them and we said, okay, do you feel better? Okay, yeah, I feel much better. Thank you so much for your work.
Mm.
Okay, how much pain do you have? Let's say in a lunge and knee pain.
Mhm.
But I have 6 out of 10, but I feel much better. And
Mhm.
I go back in my records. But first time you came, you said 4 out of 10.
So you're
So
telling me you have a higher
objective,
number of pain, but I feel better.
Yeah. So there's probably not a single factor that is driving how patient
Mm,
feel improvement because he's
mm,
probably become better at doing the lunge,
yeah.
even though he has a higher pain or he doesn't he have a recall bias of how he was feeling
Mm,
because now his goal is not about doing a lunge, it's about go running. And
yes.
that is where our whole approach about the biopsychosocial model, where I
Mm,
feel what is the different themes around different countries, and I can see in some countries they are really good at doing those outcome measures you're talking about.
mm,
But if you also talk, but that is very biomechanical often.
yes.
And then we also have like the person perspective
Mm,
and the social part. Like, are you going back to what you wanted to go back to before and those things? And I think in some countries we are better at recognizing
yes.
the whole human,
Yes.
whereas some countries we are looking like in
Very
in
physical.
Aspetar, there was yeah. In sometimes I feel when when I came to the surgeon and like could to a colleague,
Mm,
he was asking me, let me see his Biodex result, which is a proxy of how
mm,
strong he is, and he didn't look at the patient. He just looked at a paper.
yeah.
So then you judge about outcomes. Very good. He's good or no? But
Yes.
how does he feel with it? How does he change perspective? And it's a bit the same story when we ask doctors to see a scan about the low back pain, or
Yes.
it's a terrible scan. But are you
Hmm.
treating the scan? Are you treating the test? Or are you treating the patient?
We have a
And
little saying at Exercise Thought that you treat the person, not the picture. You treat the
yeah,
symptoms, not the scan. And I would like to propose an outcome measure. And like your opinion, please be very critical of this outcome measure because I want you to not just agree with me. At Exercise Thought, we tend to use a 0 to 100, where, okay, Andreas, 100 is where you want to be. So that's not just when the pain's gone away. That's when you've forgotten about the pain. That's when you just are living your life and you're doing everything that you want to do and you're enjoying that. And that's where we want you to get to. 0 is where we started. That was our first conversation. And when we started your physiotherapy, 100 is where you want to be. Where are you now? And sometimes we find clients will say, "Oh, I'm 60% better now." And then, like you said, they change their goals. They say, "Oh, well, actually, I'm back running now, but now I want to play football. Or
mm,
now I'm back playing football, but I want to be able to play football 3 times a week instead of twice a week." And and so the 100 stays solid as their desired outcome, but exactly what that looks like on a day-to-day basis does change depending on what their goals are. And so when their confidence improves and their self-efficacy improves, they then set the bar higher. And that tends to, I think, it gives greater potential for the client to achieve a better outcome instead of focusing on the negative things like pain and stiffness and restriction and things like the Oswestry scale and a lot of
mm.
these standardized outcome measures that focus on the problem and the undesirable experience of pain as opposed to the joy and participation in life. So what's your opinion about using this 0 to 100 based on the client's goals?
No, so I think that that has also been a discussion that has been around because if you always ask about what is your pain today, what is your pain tomorrow, like what is, then you're always emphasizing what is your pain.
Mm,
And if you started to ask, how happy are you today? How happy are you? How happy
mm,
were you yesterday? You're
mm.
changing the perspective of it, and this is a little bit like your 100 scale. Where do you want to go, and how far have you gone to achieve it from when we started?
Mm,
What I see is like again with my example from before, the patient's interpretation of these scales can be quite difficult,
mm,
especially when we're using on a global scale. So
mm,
let's say I had often patient coming in, especially with no experience of injury before,
mm,
or not being that what you can say physical active.
mm,
They will come in with an ankle sprain and say, I have 10 out of 10 pain
mhm.
walking in. And for me, that is where you cannot walk, like this. Where how much room do we give them to improve on that scale, and
Mm,
what can we then do about it?
mm,
So um, when we have to talk to our patient worldwide, we also have to do like some kind of uh, cultural adaptation. Normally, we use
Mm,
that between language because now I'm just make a very stereotype um, comparison.
mhm.
But let's say in Western country, we are eating more food
Yes.
that they are doing in other countries.
Mhm.
So if you're asking someone in Denmark, for example, do you feel full? And you ask
Mm,
someone in Africa, do you feel full? The
mm.
interpretation of feeling full would probably be different.
Yes.
And in Qatar, when I was working there, where Arabic was the main language,
Mhm.
the Arabic language also different very much between the Moroccan language and the Middle East. So
Okay.
when we translate the questionnaires, it have to represent all these things.
Mm,
Especially when we had like some of the concussion questionnaires,
mm.
I have just translated the ACL, ISI into Danish.
Aha.
And like, is there a difference between like how you are asking the questions in Australia and Denmark, and how do we
Mm,
feed it? And we all one of the things that have stuck me after translating it is that I found a very good correlation with other questionnaires, and I found
mm.
that it's a very one-dimensional questionnaire, and all the things are all very standard based. But I felt my female um, uh,
Athletes,
what's called
clients.
responders in the
Yeah,
in the
respondents. Yeah.
questionnaire, they were much lower. So then I could say, okay, we really need to improve ACL treatment for women.
Mm-hmm.
But could we also say that women are often underconfident in the answers, and men are maybe overconfident? It's like if I
Mm.
ask you how high are you, men tends to tell them they're a little bit taller, and if you
Yes.
what is your weight, then women tends to put a little down. So
Yes.
this cultural adaptation, it probably also have to occur locally and into a specific situation. So
Mm.
just asking everyone, how far are you from your goal, and where did you start it?
Yes.
And and for me, sometimes it was difficult. So then I try to change the question, say, okay, so from how much did you like? I use it normally as a global rate of limb symmetry. So
Mm-hmm.
in ACL, let's say this.
Yes.
Your left knee is 100%, let's say that. How far is your right knee to be
Mm-hmm.
have the same confidence as your right? I don't know, maybe 80%. So let's say, okay, is it closer to zero, or is it closer to 250? Okay, and
Yeah.
it's probably closer to 50. Okay, is it closer from 50 to 100? So in this
Mm.
way, breaking up the scale sometimes also helping. Okay, it's closer to the midline, but it's not the midline. Okay, then I get a little bit the percentiles of the 25% and the 75% a little bit far away, so I don't get a like kind of seeding effect on my own
Yes.
own participants. But it's very difficult
But
to
I
to
find
to
that to be a really difficult one with ACL because we know that if I was to injure my right ACL, for example, and please tell me if this is still true, because I think the research that I'm referring to was published some years ago and I read it some years ago. But my understanding from the research back then was that if I injure my right ACL and I then rehabilitate that right ACL, my risk of injuring my left ACL is actually higher than re-injuring my right ACL. Is that still true?
yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
if we use limb symmetry as the gold standard for ACL outcomes, we will then conclude, oh, well, now my right is 100% of the left. That's good. When actually the left is at a very high risk of re-injury, and so maybe shouldn't be the gold standard.
Yes. So, and there has been a lot of, especially we were now in a conference last week in Denmark, the Sports Congress.
Mm,
Recommend everyone to go there at some point in their life. They are very famous about the content, but
mm,
also the after party. And and one of I think it was a Swedish study that has a big Swedish ACL registry,
mhm.
where they're feeding in a lot of different, like this, the surgeons are feeding in a lot of different type of surgery is produced, and what graft type, and
Mm,
those things. And then they're also putting in some questionnaires and some strength measures,
Hmm.
and they saw that the limb symmetry is not the best outcome for predicting a secondary injury. Then
Mm.
you could have um, other outcomes that could maybe be more linked. It could be younger patient. It could be hypermobility. It could
Yeah.
be different things. So
Much like how we
um,
talked before about, using a 0 to 10 scale for pain is not
yeah,
necessarily reliable because someone will say 10 out of 10 pain, but they're still walking on the
yeah,
injured ankle. So you kind of need to say, okay, well, functional status, they're walking, pain
yeah.
levels, 10 out of 10. What's their facial expression? Well, actually, they're smiling. So
Hmm.
like it's the combination of measurements that is more accurate compared to one.
Yeah, so then it becomes like a battery of things,
Hmm.
where it's another one single test. And then we also have to find out what is important because we can test so
Mm.
many things. Um, but just to finalize that thing with the limb symmetry. So what I saw, there was a lot of studies also presenting that this treatment was better than this treatment. And
Mm.
they had like this, they will say, like, if you look at the group difference, we could see that both group improved, but this modality of intervention,
Mm.
they did better in terms of outcomes or in
Mhm.
terms of less injuries on a follow-up.
Okay.
But but what I see is that many times, here there was an example of a PCL, and they used the IKDC score at 1 year, 2 years, and 5 years.
Hmm.
So we all know that IKDC, there has been some suggestion that you need to have 62 points before start running after ACL surgery.
Hmm.
So this PCL, they tend to be a little bit more loose and you're more afraid, but they had, after 1 year, they had 60 something points. After 2 years, they have 60 something points. But I think it was like how they were doing with a bracing, because they're using a brace in this example.
Mm.
And and they saw the group that used the brace was better off. And but after 2 years, both groups are still very poor. And we forget
Yeah.
to report this. After 5 years, they had 80 something points in the IKDC score, I think 87, which I would say, okay, it's a good score.
Mm.
But why did we not get the 80 something before the 2 years, or maybe before the
Yeah.
1 year? And so using one single score like the limb symmetry, but also
Mm.
maybe if we have tested them, they might had a limb symmetry in strength test at a certain point, but how strong were they actually compared to what we would expect?
Mm.
So a lot of people are just doing the test. We are starting to use the test. We are starting to be more objective. But how do we interpreting this test here?
Mm.
Because it's easy for us all to give a course test and IKDC, or do a strength test. And that's where I see the difference in a lot of countries is the accessibility to testing,
Mm.
because many of these things are very, very expensive.
Expensive. Yeah.
And then how to make an infrastructure so you can put it up in a nice scale. Like I think you talked about the AI in the beginning. Like, how can we use some of these things to make a dashboard or a visual presentation for the, because many times it becomes, I have 30 minutes with my patient, I have to do this test, and
Mm.
and and then I just write it in my notes, but it's not something that the patient can really benefit from or can take it back. Or we say you're doing fine, but we forget to put him in a kind of like, what is the norm? What would I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
expect
Yeah,
for you?
like clients want to know, am I on track? Am I ahead
Yeah,
of schedule? Am I slow? I need to work a bit harder. And I mean, now seems to be an appropriate time because you did mention the use of AI, and look, what I see as the future of physiotherapy is that the whole of humanity, everyone on Earth and also on Mars in very near future, I believe that we will all have access to world-class physiotherapy at near zero cost because we are developing tools that are accessible via the internet. 85% of the world's population is connected to the internet via smart device. And we have these tools that are freely available that are capable of diagnosing and capable of providing recommendations that are personalized based on the personalized data given to the tool. And and so I believe it's quite possible that such an AI tool would be able to say, okay, Andreas, you're sitting on the 85th percentile for your knee extension strength on a knee extension exercise, or you're sitting on the 50th percentile for this other measurement, or whatnot. Your overall risk of injuring your ACL when you return to sport is going to be, this percentage. I think that's quite feasible, and that it would be more accessible, more affordable, more accurate, and more effective than the current approach to physiotherapy. So, what is your opinion on this, Andreas? Do you think that this is feasible? Do you think this can happen, or do you think it would be dangerous to do that, or undesirable to do that?
So I always think there needs to be a man behind the steering wheel. So um, uh, I still, so again, we talked about the interpretation and these things, and these AI tools can maybe say, okay, what is the norm? How far away are you from it? But there's the whole human factor that I don't think we can just put it in. It made me think about now when I came back from Middle East to Denmark. I will put myself in a category of becoming a very high specialized in using isokinetic device, testing knee
Mm,
strength at different speeds and those things. Now I can, is a very expensive machine.
mm,
And when I came back to Denmark, no private clinic has that machine. So it's the golden standard, but you cannot refer any single patient in Denmark to get a test. It is
mm,
in universities and hospitals, but on a daily basis you cannot get a referral
mm,
to get it.
mm.
But is that also okay?
No,
Is
I would, I
if
mean, if it can't help anyone in Denmark without them buying a plane ticket to go to a different country, I would say it's useless.
yes, yeah, yeah. So just okay. Would it be okay? We all have isometric strength test, or is it still okay? We just say I'm
Mm,
feeling good. So we are back at that battery, and
mm,
I would still say we all need to have a certain test of in different domains that cover the whole thing. I think strength is a very important specific to the
mm,
population. So are we talking about ACL patient that is
mm,
going back to sport? Are we
mm,
talking about ACL patient who are going back to become like to office
mm.
and like just straightforward running and those things. So
Yes.
again, it all those factors. We do need to give everyone a patient specific questionnaire
Mm,
for their symptoms, and
mhm.
there has been a lot of criticize about like cause. What is that actually measurement? Can we use
Mm.
cause for OA and for ACL patient
Yeah.
and those things? So we do need to individualize all of our things. So
Maybe it's a
then we
combination.
come.
It's the standardized, okay, this questionnaire asks questions that are generally relevant to someone with your injury, but then we also add to that the personal goals and aspirations or concerns that you have as an individual, and then we combine them. And and okay, so I just
But I think I have the answer on these questions now. So I do
mm,
think the AI and the internet can do like a kind of a flow chart where it will say, should I be concerned right now? Should I
mm,
go and get like a medical consultation, or
yes,
should I go and get a physio
uh-huh,
consultation?
uh-huh,
And there has been a bit about this. If you get low back pain, when should you get your MRI scan? You shouldn't get
yeah,
it within 3 months. So it could also be you are seeing a doctor too early
mm,
after ACL, or or maybe also too late. But and I think in Australia now they are trying to give people this information about if they should have surgery or not surgery, and they
yes,
go through a
they
flow
are.
chart.
Yep.
And I see a lot of what you can say technology involving in terms of using the mobile camera, and I'm using myself when I see patient online
Mm,
that they are sending me a picture of their squat, and I can put
mm,
some markers in and can see what is the difference in a single leg squat compared to
mm,
the other side. I don't need to have a 3D motion, and I see
mm,
some companies is now saying we do exercise from home, and when you have done a squat to a certain extent based on your first squat, that counts. So
Mm.
you get the camera, and I know this one of this company in Denmark, they had a quite difficulty with using Android phones because the cameras are
Yeah.
so many different, but it has been aligned at the moment.
Mm.
And I think in Europe, especially in Denmark, there is a big focus on digitalization, and I think 30% in Denmark, 30% of consultation in the public should be like it's a national-wide goal that 30% of all consultations should be
Ah,
online in 28.
okay,
So
that's kind of soon.
yeah, and they already started with having a lot of like these uh, glad
Yep.
program online and other things, and I think in mental health and many of the consultation can also be online and these
Mm.
things. And then the government is that better than they come in, but for a lot of patients is about the transport. They're losing quickly 1 hour to go get back,
It's
and
the
if it's just a
productivity,
follow
right?
up and it's so they do want to have a little bit more option. Right now, it's optional for the
Yes.
patient to say, do you want to have a program online or do you want
Mm.
to come in? And I think it's good that they have the option. I don't think in the future everyone should be just online.
Yes.
So, but maybe there could be a flowchart saying
Mm.
who's in a risk group and
Yes.
who's not in a risk group.
I remember
Um,
during COVID, we had quite strict lockdowns in Melbourne, where we have Exercise Thoughts main clinic, and the restrictions were so tight that there were very few reasons allowing someone to leave their own home, and that included going to a physiotherapist. And we had some clients when the door for the consultation room was closed, and it was the patient with the physiotherapist confidentially talking about their health, the patients would turn to us as physiotherapists and say things like, I just needed to get away from my family. I was going to kill someone. Or or they'd say like I was going to go crazy. Like I needed to get out of the house and just relax. Like teaching these kids their homework while they're always around and I'm trying to work from home. It's doing my head in and that's why I've got a headache. And
yeah.
so we very much saw that there was this need for human contact. There was this need to just be with someone who cares about you and who can confidentially listen in you talking about your health. And that's that human touch that you talked about. And I think you're exactly right that, okay, the AI can create a flow chart and help as a decision-making tool, but there needs to be this care and warmth of human contact together with the intelligence of the AI. And so I wonder, Andreas, you as an individual, maybe you plus an AI, are you the world's best physiotherapist?
No, I think I'm the world best student because because
That's
I always hungry to learn more.
well, that's a
and
great thing to be.
and I think that when the day I say yes to that question, I
Mhm.
fall into the category of becoming a guru, like everyone else. Like, and
Mhm.
I will never get to that point, and I'm not smart enough to be seen there. But then I will probably promote one way and one way
Yeah,
only approach. So
yeah,
I do hope that no matter what I found out there, that I'm always up for like prove me wrong.
yes. You want to be
And
open-minded to learning more, and you don't want to get stuck down one dogmatism. Uh, all right. Look, is there a physio out there who you believe is the world's best physio?
so I'm standing on the shoulders of many what I will call giants and gurus in my own
Mm,
field as well, and
mm,
those you also need to have. So there's nothing bad with that. You need to have some people that inspire you, and I remember when I was doing my physio degree, and I couldn't see myself where do I really want to work in, and I took my first Mulligan courses, and like
mm,
you're going out there and take your concept, but it's not because that particular person was the best physios. He's a very good physio, but he just met me at the right time.
mm,
And he was opening the door. He believed in me. He said, "Come and see my my treatment with a patient. He had a master degree in physiotherapy from Australia, but also a manual therapy, I think it was, and also in psychology. So
Mm.
he was giving like us a lot of like homework, like try to make a case report, send it in to me, and I would send it
Mm.
back and these things. Then same time I also worked a lot with my master thesis was